Hey, cannabis traders and investors, away from home but not away from the charts. We've had a solid week for the bulls, the first win in a long time. We'll look at what some of the catalysts were. We'll look at what those catalysts could potentially turn into the future. And we'll look at the charts and technical setups to help us determine, has the bottom been hit? Are we looking up from here? And what else is needed for longer term trend changes to take place? All right, so first we'll go a little breakdown of the fundamentals. A lot to keep track of recently, and by all means correct me if I'm incorrect on any of this, but some of the catalysts we've seen in the short term, we had the SAFE Act being added to the NDAA by amendment, and that was approved by the House, so that now goes to the Senate. When? Potentially sometime in the next couple of weeks. It can go all the way into December. In the recent past, there was back and forth with Trump, and that was going on in December with the NDAA bill. Other than that, we started consolidation to end this week, and then there was more news coming out, pun intended, with the MORE Act. This Wednesday, I believe, is going to be in subcommittee of the House. So then after the subcommittee and after it gets marked up with any changes, it then goes to the House to be voted on. And then after the House, it goes to the Senate. So not much has changed with the change in the makeup of the House and the Senate since our last election, where essentially getting through the House is the easy part. It's the Senate that is the hurdle. And we're going to find out very quickly if the decades-old statement from the WHO of meet the old boss, same as the new boss, is the same. And what I mean by that is McConnell in the Senate would just chop down any bill that got to him that would favor MJ back when he was reigning over the Senate. Now the question is Schumer going to do the same thing? And we have an interesting dynamic where Schumer and Booker are looking for more, essentially, in what they want as far as a big, broad, comprehensive bill that's to be passed. And a lot of people look at that and say, well, to get support for that, it's going to be a lot more difficult, especially with all the social justice things that they want included and getting Republican support for that. And so the question is, will they settle and take a smaller win? Will they pass SAFE in the NDAA as an amendment? Or are they going to say, no, this isn't what we want more, and then just have us back in this spinning tire state of nothing changing? So we'll see. It's all about the Senate. It always has been. So a lot of people don't think that the SAFE Act is going to be added or approved through the Senate. And that's a good thing, in my opinion, as far as price action is concerned, because if it was assumed that it was going to pass with high probability, it would be priced in at this point. So we're in a scenario where the more people that doubt it, if it does pass, we should see the price react to that taking place. And it's just, again, we talked about last week, the main message of the video is bulls have not had any win in the short term. There's a big goose egg on the board right now. And again, we're just getting this slowly building up some momentum. And it has a lot to do with media as well. We need media to be talking about the sector if we're going to see interest in the sector and capital coming in. And we have the show Billions talking about, the state of the sector right now. So we're just getting a little bit more and more attention, which is always a good thing. And again, even if some of these votes don't pass, or even if it's a long, slow road, it leads to articles, it leads to CNBC mentions. And those are always good things for price action as well. So let's now look into the technicals. Again, we have to be keeping a close eye on the results of these votes, because in my opinion, we would be bouncing right now, even if it weren't for any of these sector-specific fundamentals. It just wouldn't be as significant a bounce. Why do I say that? Because the S&P 500 here had a very solid week. We started the week with fear, high fear, on a big gap down open and a very red day. And the bulls bought the dip, and they've been following through the entire week. So when we saw the bottom of COVID, that was the best time to buy the MJ sector anytime recently. And it was the broader market, extremely fearful, and then finding a base, and that was that. So the sector is now hoping that the SPY bulls, the S&P 500, can alleviate the fear that lasted a couple of weeks and can eventually confirm a daily trend change back to the bulls. And we'll be talking about all-time highs very quickly. We're closer to all-time highs right now than we are to our recent lows, which is a good sign. Solid bounce. So again, the correlation and the dissipation of fear would be having the sector bounce regardless. But it's just a nice timing double whammy with sector-specific news in conjunction with the market bottoming and getting a very notable bounce. So we're going to always be keeping an eye on the broader market, and we're going to always be keeping an eye on the individual developments for the sector. So Canadian MJ ended the week, and we had a bunch of downgrades coming in at the same time. Looked a little bit concerted as far as, okay, all these downgrades coming in at the same time from different sources, but it's keeping the sector extremely weak. The last video last weekend, we were talking about the bear flags on the daily timeframes. They confirmed to start the week with the big gap down open and the fear in the broader market, and then a solid oversold bounce, absolutely. And there was a trade to be made there, and I have been trading the Canadian MJ names. Again, my style in these sectors and how I approach them is day trading Canadian MJ where there's high liquidity and volume and more of a swing trade mindset in the US MJ sector. So the inside bar bull break here on Wednesday, we broke that at 1394 resistance. And again, a lot of follow through. 1394 to 1481, that's a solid 5% plus on just that signal. And it was from daily oversold conditions. But we topped out on the bounce, just set a daily lower high. Our new most important resistance short term is 1481. And here we are with a weak close on Friday and looking back down at the low of 1335. And we are closer to the low of support than we are to the high of the bounce. We have just a clear downtrend guide. And we have to look at this and say, well, SPY hasn't even started consolidating yet. What if we start next week with SPY pulling back to look for a daily higher low? We could then say, well, the Canadian MJ sector is not positioned well if that were to take place. So bears still have absolute complete control of Canadian MJ, and the gap up open on Thursday just had bears salivating. I mean, how many times have we seen bearish entries on small bounces in the sector, and gap up opens are the time? Again, it's what I've been saying in the last video, where as long as it keeps working, bears are going to keep doing it. We would have to see a gap up open and then a big run and just squash any bears for them to learn their lesson, because there's no lesson being learned. They're continuing to profit on this big pullback. And a gap up open marking the top of this bounce. So daily EMA 12 resistance, the bulls would have to hold 1335 and break 1481 if we were going to then say, okay, there's our first shift in momentum in CGC that we have seen in months. Again, we have not seen a daily higher low and higher high in CGC since we topped out back in June. So it's now been over 3 months with just a very picture perfect, clear daily downtrend. Can't get any more clear as what we have here. TLRY, so similar. It did have a solid bounce as well. Daily inside bar bull break. And again, from that bull break of 1154, we did see nice follow through, and it was a solid gap up open, and it was an 8% move from the inside bar bull break. We did take out some resistance levels, but the bulls have to confirm a trend change, which would mean holding 1102 and breaking the high of the bounce of 1198 if anything is going to change. So that would just be step number one, baby step number one for momentum shift, because when you're in a downtrend on a monthly, weekly, daily time frame, you have to change those trends one at a time. And it's frustrating because it's a long, slow road, because you change the daily trend and it just means zoom out and scout a weekly lower high. And you change the weekly trend and it means you zoom out and scout a monthly lower high. And the most bullish names out there are in monthly, weekly, daily uptrends. And that's going to take a long time to develop in a lot of these names. So a lot of space for a daily higher low. I would anticipate a daily higher low compared to 1102 would be the initial most likely scenario. But again, just sector weakness overall, bulls have to prove it. ACB is weaker than most. It had news over the week of shutting down part of its operations and laying off some of its workforce. So another daily bear flag is possible here. We just confirmed one recently. Earnings were delayed, and I believe that's now early next week. I forget the date exactly that they moved it to, but we've got 585 as the only support nearby. And after 585, we're down looking at 5 psychological as the next level, and a new clear short-term resistance established with the high of the bounce of 623. So Canadian MJ already weak, but ACB now has additional weakness with this news, and the earnings reaction is coming up. And keep an eye on the earnings reaction, because its sector peers are likely to react and correlate with its earnings reaction to a certain degree. So on to USMJ, IIPR, again, just the beast of the sector that does not get the attention it deserves. I don't know why that is. I don't know why everybody is so focused on MSOs when you have an extremely well-performing, dividend-paying, uplisted stock. And I get that, MSOs and this REIT are different, but isn't the goal just gains and profit? It's in a monthly, weekly, daily uptrend. So weekly higher low trying to form, and off EMA 12, it's a potential bull flag, and that's our new key support level from here, 225. And it's a simple statement: if 225 is support and has not broken, the bulls have absolute long-term control of this uptrend. As far as resistance, I'm looking at 247.68, and then again, we're right there back at the all-time high again of 253.61. And this name is positioned very well. If we were to see the broader market recover back to all-time highs, it will very likely hit all-time highs as well if that is the case. And again, it is very correlated to SPY, but it's even stronger as SPY is, well, no, SPY saved it. I take it back. I was going to say SPY losing weekly EMA 12, but nice save. Holding it still for 6 months, but for IIPR, just a better look as far as bouncing right off of it. And again, right back up towards that all-time high. Extremely strong still. So on to the MSOs. So MSOS, we have our daily trend change. And that took place because we held the low and then broke the high. We had the highest volume ever on Friday in reaction to, what day am I looking at here? No, it was mid last week, where it was the highest hourly volume that we've ever seen on MSOS. And that was the initial reaction and response to the fact that the SAFE was going to be an added amendment onto NDAA. And keep in mind that shares and dollar volume are different. For me, dollar volume is more important. So I can look at that and say, okay, that is the highest share volume ever in 1 hour on MSOS. But it's not the highest dollar volume ever, because a million shares traded at $45 is very different than a million shares traded at $30. So just keep that in mind whenever you're looking at volume. You want to be factoring in what's the dollar volume, because that's what's more important. But either way, it was a lot of volume, and we saw a nice bounce, and we confirmed the daily trend change. We started to top out on Thursday, and it was a little bit concerning because if you change the daily trend and then go straight into consolidation, a trend change with a lack of follow through means zoom out and scout a flag. And we would have been looking for the potential of a weekly bear flag if we started consolidation into the end of this week. And we did start consolidation, but that dip was aggressively bought on Friday. And again, it was with the help of some news where now we're getting the More Act in the headlines. So that headline had a good part to play, and it's a good sign to see the first dip after a solid bounce being bought up aggressively, because that shows us the bulls that missed the initial bull move are waiting for the dip and they're buying that dip. And it also means that if that leads to higher highs, that any short-term bears that make entries are being put in the red very quickly or being forced to cover. There's also some shenanigans that people are looking at as far as, the end of the day action that leads to the big sell-offs in these OTC thinly traded names. And I did put a video out describing that a long time ago. I forget when exactly, but I'll link that video in the comments of this YouTube video if you want a little bit more insight as to some of the games that may be being played with this ETF and with its holdings on the OTC. But either way, it's just all about the trends for me. And we closed strong on Friday. The bulls need to break 32.64 on Monday to keep this move going. 33.46 is then the next key level. And again, whenever I'm looking at a name that's coming from a prolonged trend in one direction to the other, I then look at time and I say, okay, if we get over 33.46, I can say that anybody that's gone short in MSOS in the last 6 weeks is now underwater. And then if we clear 37.50, I can then say that anybody that's gone short MSOS in the last 2 months is now underwater. So I like to visualize it that way, because the more shorts you're putting underwater, the more buying pressure we see from shorts that are being forced to cover. So, I could be a confident bear in from months ago, slowly watching some of my profits erode. And the more my profits erode, the more likely I am to cover that position. So 33.46 is a key weekly resistance level. And if we cannot break 33.46, we still stand in a very clear weekly downtrend. So that's a key level. The volume is shaping up here. We have the highest volume on the weekly time frame these past 2 weeks that we've seen in months. So what does that mean? That means we're looking for a monthly volume climax here. We still got 5 days of trading, and it's going to be the highest volume on MSOS in the last 6 months. So that's notable. Volume climaxes often mark tops and bottoms. So to see a lot of volume pour in here, you're seeing two things. You're seeing the last of the bear momentum and their volume, and then you're seeing the bull volume with dip buyers and then forcing some shorts to cover. And that's why you get this confluence of volume. It's from both directions occurring at bigger picture pivots, essentially. So a bullish reversal candle is attempting to form on the monthly. We've had a pattern of a lower high every single month for 7 months in a row. And we're looking for October to break that pattern and start a bounce. I anticipate that a monthly lower high will then be the most likely scenario, pending any kind of surprise news catalyst, but that is the most likely scenario, and that's what we're seeing on Bitcoin right now. You know, I've made a lot of comparisons with cryptocurrency and MJ over the past, but big time breakout, big time pullback. It's happening a lot faster in a condensed period of time, but it's still an extremely wide range that's forming an equilibrium, because equilibriums are the most likely scenario after significant volatility. And we can certainly say we've seen significant volatility from all-time low to all-time high to 75%, whatever it was, retracement of that move. And then we're going to see a bull move eventually. We're going to scout a monthly lower high, and we're going to look for a tightening monthly range to form into 2022. And then ideally it breaks bullish. So for me personally, again, I am trading the sector swing mindset for MSOS, and I do have some IRA exposure, just seeing enough of this news catalyst to get some exposure, and short-term trading mindset over here and swing trading mindset over here. I'd like to be holding this position for months, but I'm not married to it, and I'm going to react to every new day of information that we get. And the bulls have to continue proving it, because again, they have a lot of work to do. And we need to see a weekly trend change eventually. So even if we follow through for 2 more weeks, once we top out on this weekly move, we then have to form a weekly higher low and higher high if this prolonged momentum shift is going to have staying power. TCNNF, nice bounce off the low. It was more beat up to the downside, and we had reasons for that, but daily trend change confirmed, solid close on Friday, and all USMJ wants to break the high of this past week on Monday. Just follow through. Look at the daily EMA 12 and 26 here, and it's the red and blue line. When's the last time it crossed bull? It hasn't since all-time highs. We came real close here, but it rejected, and here we are shaping up for the first bull cross. So again, that's just one of many indications of a shift in the longer-term trend. So a bull break of 30 would be ideal. Very clear psychological resistance level that we were extended into and rejected from. And again, it was another scenario where bears that shorted $30 made good money real quick. We pulled back 6% in a few hours from that resistance level. But if we get over 30 first thing on Monday, anybody that went short at that psychological resistance level that did not cover is now underwater. So the more you can put short-term shorts underwater, the more that adds to the buying pressure on the bounce trying to follow through. So we zoom out to the weekly. Great, we cleared some short-term resistance levels. 33.73 is the most important level from here on the bigger picture. And again, it's the same thing. Once we top out here, we will have to confirm a weekly trend change if we're going to say, yep, our convincing monthly higher low is set. And again, it's another name with a very wide range that would have us scouting a monthly lower high and tightening range into 2022. Now onto the psychedelic sector, and the sector took a little bit of, well, it didn't take a hit, but we had the potential for an amendment to be added to the NDAA as far as researching psychedelics on active duty military, and that did not make the cut. So that would have been a nice little short-term news catalyst, but that's no longer in the picture. But honestly, this sector is a lot more developed on its bounce than the MJ sector right now. So look at CMPS. This is what I'm talking about, where it confirmed a daily trend change a while ago, back in a month ago. And once we confirm the daily trend change, we say, great, we got an uptrend now. But now we just zoom out. We have to prove it on the weekly. So here is what an attempted weekly trend change looks like. And for those that are newer to technical analysis and don't exactly know what to be looking for with the MJ sector, we have a clear example for it in our psychedelic names. So this is now a weekly trend change attempt, where the bulls must hold the low and break the high to confirm the weekly trend change. And again, it's one time frame at a time. And we gave back a good bit of this bull move. We gave back 50%. And so if you don't know to be zooming out and looking at all these different time frames, you may look at this and say, oh no, the bears are taking back over and we're about to drop down and hit fresh lows. That bounce was short-lived. But bigger picture, if you just zoom out, it's an attempt at a weekly higher low trying to form. So if the bulls can hold 29.31 and get some bounce follow through this coming week, our weekly higher low will be set at 30.86, and then it's up to the bulls to break 35.50 to confirm a weekly trend change. If they are able to pull that off, we then zoom out and we look at our monthly resistance. So again, it's one time frame at a time, and it's a long, slow road. This bounce has been in the making now for 6 weeks. And we are only on week number 2 for the MJ bounce. So let's just say we get another 2 weeks of bounce. Ideally, that would be great for the bulls, but then we have to pull back and set a weekly high or low. So again, long, slow road. Just want to burn that through everybody's head. We're not just going to go straight up from here, as nice as that would be. So ATAI off of the all-time low is the same deal. Weekly high or low trying to form. If this weekly inside bar breaks bull to start this week, our higher low is set at 1485, and then we have to break 1790 to confirm the weekly uptrend for the first time in the history of this stock, which is a recent IPO. MNMD is more like MJ. It's less developed on its bounce. So it did confirm a daily trend change, which is nice, but we just zoom out and weekly resistance is 297. So we can say anything under 297 is just another weekly lower high, and we need multiple bounces on the multiple weeks of bounce for a weekly trend change to try and set up and take shape. So again, it's going to be 3-4 weeks from now, ideally, if we get bounce follow through, that we will have to be seeing that weekly trend change try and shape up. So this goes back to, strategy. I know most people watching this already have positions, but it's aggressive or conservative. Because if I'm looking at MSOS here and I'm saying, great, this is a nice bounce, but I want to be real protective here and I want the bulls to prove it. I'm waiting for this weekly bounce to top out, even if it goes another 20%, and then I'm looking to try and enter on a weekly higher low if the bulls prove to me this is a big enough bounce. And I'm just giving a hypothetical situation. But if the bulls get a big enough bounce and say, okay, they proved it to me on this bounce, a weekly higher low is the most likely scenario next time we consolidate. And you can be patiently waiting for weekly consolidation. And again, back to Bitcoin. Every time I'm talking about something, I'm remembering something in a different sector. But we had the same thing where Bitcoin bounced off its low and it just went straight up for 6 weeks and it did not stop. And it got to a certain point here after the first 3 or 4 weeks where we were just saying, we will have to confirm a weekly trend change. We will see weekly consolidation. If you're not in at this point, rather than chasing here, you're waiting for the weekly consolidation. And now that it's taking place, that is where a more patient bull, or a bull did not get the full position that they wanted originally, this is where they're looking to add to it, anticipating a weekly higher low will be the most likely scenario because of how much space the bulls have to work with to form that weekly higher low. So I'm going to keep putting out these weekend MJ videos. And again, it's not a coincidence that I started, how long was that break of no videos being put out in the sector? And then I started to put out these weekly videos and it didn't nail the bottom. It was a little bit early, but that's when, I'm interested again. And I'm very surprised with the number of views that these videos are getting. It's one thing to get a bunch of views when there's hype and euphoria and everybody's making money, but it's another thing for this many views while we're still very weak. So everybody's itching for it here. And once we do get momentum going, we will see, everybody jump on board. Reddit's going to jump on board, and these influencers on Twitter are going to jump on board, and they're going to add to the excitement and euphoria. We're not at that stage yet, but that's an inevitability. It's just whether does it happen now? Do we have to wait until voting season 2022 when we have some catalysts with some individual states to be looking towards? But it's going to be an exciting adventure. From here over the next decade plus, we're going to take it one day at a time here with the Chart Guys. And I appreciate you watching. Establish those game plans in advance. Write them down. That way you are not as prone to reacting to your emotions in the heat of the moment, which is obviously something we never want to do. Best of luck, do good things, and we'll see you soon.